Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Right now, it's our Week 5 instant reaction here, Sunday night, right in between the 4 o'clock games and Sunday Night Football. As always, we're doing it every single week, Sam. So, Week 5, another crazy week in the NFL. It started Thursday night with the greatest primetime game we've ever seen in NFL history. But then you've got the London game this morning, the New York Giants. I told you it'd be a good game. I may not have picked the right winner, but I told you it was one of the games of the week. The Giants moved to 4-1, and then all sorts of other craziness this week. So, what are your instant reactions so far to Week 5?
Yeah, it did end up being a good game. I don't know why. I mean, there was no reason that should have been a good game. And even halfway through the game, there was no reason that should have been a good game. It should have been Green Bay is fairly firmly in charge, and then they just somehow managed to not let that happen. My biggest sort of takeaway from this week is general confusion surrounding the NFC East. Philadelphia makes sense. They're the only 5-0 team in the NFL. I think they're a very good team. They survived a Cardinals team that themselves is, I think, not as bad as people have been kind of making out. They're still capable of showing up and beating most teams in the NFL. They survived that game. They go to 5-0. They are rightfully in charge of that division. But Dallas is undefeated with Cooper Rush at quarterback. The New York Giants are somehow 4-1 after being seen as a sort of relatively fraudulent 3-1 team. I don't quite understand how they're winning games either.
Big win this week.
Yeah, and then, Washington makes some sense as well. But I don't really understand how those two teams in the middle are still winning all these games.
So I know we want to talk about Week 5 and instant reactions. The more I think about it, I really think we're hitting this NFL where offense is down, right? We see the offensive numbers down. There's some injuries on the offensive line. But, a couple years ago, it looked bleak as far as the great quarterbacks in the NFL. We're really not getting dominant quarterback play right now. Josh Allen's playing at a high level, or Patrick Mahomes playing at a high level. Brady and Rodgers are down a tick right now. You've got Geno Smith maybe playing really well, but with one of the worst rosters in the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks. Jalen Hurts is playing really well. Okay, that's working. They're 5-0. All I'm saying is there's no dominant quarterback play at the top of the league right now. So I think that's why you see teams with, like the Giants, running Saquon Barkley out of the Wildcat and getting creative. It's really, I think this year, coaching and creativity and a little bit of luck when it comes to some of these teams with great records. Dallas, excellent defense, really cracking down on the Rams. And that's the other thing too, Sam. I think you look at the Rams, poor Matthew Stafford, he had a finger injury. He already came into the season with an elbow injury. His whole torso looked like he was, he's holding his ribs after every hit. I think the best quarterbacks in the NFL, or the guys that have been the most productive over the last couple of years, seem to have lesser supporting cast too, right? The Rams offensive line falling apart. Brady with the revolving door at receiver. Aaron Rodgers not having the same guys as previous years. I think all of that's adding up to this league being, a whole lot of just uncertainty week after week.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about some of the injuries that have happened so far this season, an incredible concentration of them on the offensive line, in particular at left tackle, but also there are teams that have had wide receiver groups decimated as well. I think some of these games are a reflection of that. It's a lot of top quality players that are part of a quarterback supporting cast are not there at a time when defense is a little bit in the ascendancy. And by that, I mean, they've found a kind of direction to move in that does cause offenses problems generally, and it's all this sort of too high coverage type of shells, the stuff that was happening to Kansas City specifically last year and is now a much more league-wide trend. But you couple that with offensive lines that are struggling to pass block, and all of a sudden you've got a defensive sort of setup that is taking away big plays, forcing quarterbacks to be patient and work through their progressions and take underneath stuff, and a means of getting pass rush quicker because offensive lines are not as strong as they were with all these injuries. And all of a sudden, you're actually able to get pressure and force mistakes in this thing as well.
I want to get to some of the controversies of the week, but first, the NFL action is in full swing here at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If that's not enough, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Right now, for every leg you add, you can boost your winnings up to 100%. With payouts bigger than ever, why bet on football anywhere else? To make things even sweeter, you could throw down on stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day all season long. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code PFF only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, Sam, we've got one of the worst roughing the passer calls in NFL history. Grady Jarrett, third down sack of Tom Brady, prolonged that drive. Bucs ended up pulling out the win 21-15. We have Brandon Staley once again going for it on fourth down. Previous times, the controversy was going in. You gave up a field goal. You gave it. This was reminiscent of Bill Belichick back in 2009 going for one play away from the win, and you don't get it. The other team's in field goal range, essentially. But it worked out, ultimately. Chargers end up winning with the Browns' missed field goal. So those are some things, I think, that will be talked about this week.
Yeah, the roughing the passer call was horrific. I mean, it was a joke.
It was egregious. It was terrible.
Jerome Boger came out and sort of justified it in whatever it was, the press conference, the conversation with reporters afterwards, and essentially used the tagline, unnecessarily threw him to the ground, which is the magic words that the rule book uses for this kind of thing to qualify as roughing the passer. Only it wasn't. Like, he didn't unnecessarily throw him to the ground. He threw him to the ground in the act of sacking him.
He just tackled him.
That's just defense. Like, that's just how you play. Particularly, look, you can't have it both ways, right? If quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and all these other guys that are capable of fighting out of insane physical contact and tackles and stuff and still making a ridiculous play, as long as that exists, you can't penalize a defender for, making sure that the quarterback is not going to get out of this by putting the guy on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just say this is thud contact or two-hand touch and then we're done, because it isn't. Like, as long as the quarterbacks are able to get away with that, the defender should be absolutely and is allowed to do what Grady Jarrett did.
Yeah, so it was a bad call. Look, I don't think it's a Tom Brady thing, because we see bad calls like this all the time. In the previous play, the Falcons did have no call pass interference that would have ended the game, essentially. But terrible call, terrible way for the Falcons to not have another opportunity to win. By the way, the Falcons went for 2 to get within 6. One of those, analytical moves that's really smart. And they were in position to maybe have that game-winning drive, but all for naught. Any thoughts on the Chargers one? My issue now, we saw this last year with the Chargers. It's not that you could just choose to be good on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. That would be quite the cheat code. It's like, I'll just be good. I'll just pick the good plays. But the Chargers do seem to be picking some low percentage plays, some ISO routes on the outside. They did this last year at times. This was a slant, and they had slant flat on the other side, which is kind of like a rub, that creates an open window, which was open, by the way. This was just an ISO, hey, Mike Williams, go win, and he didn't win. And it's that part seems really risky when you're running this 4th and 1.5 with the game on the line.
Yeah, a lot of people are big mad at the call in the first place. Go for it on 4th and short to win the game rather than kick it away, but all that kind of stuff, right? Again, I don't think the call to go for it is a bad decision at all, unless you are factoring in the idea that the Chargers are weirdly terrible at these 4th and 3rd and short plays, which they are, and they have been for a while. But I don't think you can use that as a reason to stop doing them, because there's no reason they should be that bad at these things. So what they need to do is to use the information, the data that is telling them to go for these decisions in the first place, and turn that on the play calling and say, why do we suck so bad at this? Like, let's do some self-scouting on these 3rd and 4th and short plays and figure out why we are so hopelessly inadequate at converting them, because that's what's costing us the win percentage points right now, not the decision to go for it in the first place. I think they're making the correct database calls and then screwing it up with the execution, which I think should be a fixable problem.
We'll have more, as always, on the PFF NFL podcast. We'll go game by game, but the other things, big stuff from week 5. You've got Teddy Bridgewater lasting just a pass attempt before Skylar Thompson had to come in. 3rd string quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Jets win 40-17. Made a statement against the Dolphins' 3rd string quarterback, but really nice job by Zach Wilson in that offense. You have Kirk Cousins throwing away the lead, but then having his 4th quarter comeback in 3 weeks for the Vikings to win 29-22 against the Bears. And then the upstart Jaguars. Everybody was so excited about the Jaguars. They lose 13-6 against the Houston Texans. And excitement is waning in Jacksonville.
I mean, it just shows you should never buy into the Jags before they give you a good enough reason to, and that wasn't a good enough reason. Is Trevor Lawrence still a top 10 quarterback? Question.
We'll talk about it more tomorrow on the Buffalo Bills. Dominant over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Josh Allen kicking it off with a 98-yarder, and somehow it got better, I think, from there. So anyway, we'll have the full story on the PFF NFL podcast. For now, it's our instant reactions for Week 5. It's the PFF